So today I'm going to be bringing you guys what I think is one of the strongest pyro builds in the entire game, if not in general entire builds. It is absurd how fast you can fly through different expeditions. The trials is solo. I was beating in like 14 minutes or less. It's just crazy how fast you can fly through all of the different pieces of content within Outriders. But before we jump into the video, I just want to say this video is sponsored by Outriders Worldslayer. So if you haven't already jumped into Worldslayer, it has added a brand new campaign where you're going to face off against Ash Overheat. Also, there's new Apocalypse and Ascension tiers. It's a new progression system. It's going to allow you guys to get a bunch of extra stats towards your builds. And then on top of that, there's a brand new, basically, skill tree, the Pax tree. This is a very powerful skill tree that can be changed at any time to fit whatever builds. The Pyros one is amazing. You can use it in so many different ways, and honestly, it's one of my favorite Pax trees. And then all of the new gear that has been added with Worldslayer as well is amazing. This build would not be possible without the new Apocalypse gear, where you get 3 mods. Eruption normally takes a lot of mods, but now with those extra ones, you can fit everything that you need and make one of the most powerful builds in the game. There's also a brand new endgame, the Trials of Tarja Gratar. You can fight through a bunch of different ways and treasure rooms and fight different bosses along the way. And on top of all of that, there's been a ton of fixes and improvements upon the original game. So if you guys have not jumped back into Outriders since playing it at launch, I highly recommend doing so. Also, if you haven't jumped into Outriders at all, I highly recommend doing so as well. There'll be a link in the description down below. But now let's fully dive into this Eruption build. So starting off with our skills for this build, we're going to be using Ash Blast, Eruption, and Overheat. So Ash Blast and Overheat are going to be our main mobbing sources. This is essentially the Ash Blast Overheat meta that we saw last year with that insane clear speed. But on top of that now, with all of the new changes and gear, it's going to be very good single target damage as well. And then obviously we do have Eruption. You're going to be able to murder entire hordes of enemies in just one button push. Also, all of your elites you're going to be killing in one button push. And then certain bosses, you can do that as well, like the spider boss in one of the expeditions. Also, the final boss of the trials, you can kill in about 2 rotations consistently with this setup. And I think with the perfect gear, you're going to be able to kill him in 1 rotation. So overall, this combo is incredibly powerful. Now, taking a look at our class skill tree, we're just going to be taking the bottom tree all the way down to the end. And as you guys can tell, I have skipped out on Phoenix Nestling and also with Fire and Anomaly. Normally these get picked up in a bottom tree build, but we're actually going to need these 2 points up at the top for some smaller nodes. With Fire and Anomaly, it's only 12% anomaly power bonus, and we're actually getting more damage out of the skill node that I put this point into instead. Also, Phoenix Nestling, we don't really need it. We don't die very often because everything's just dead miles before it can get to us, and it's going to allow us to get more damage. So those 2 points ended up going into our resistance piercing node here and our armor piercing node here. And the reason that is because resistance piercing is just going to be straight damage. Like, it's going to go into our Pax tree, which we're going to look at here in a second. And it's also going to give us anomaly power. And then also with our mods, armor piercing just gets turned into resistance piercing. So this is essentially a 10% resistance piercing node. It's going to be very helpful for getting a lot more damage out of our explosive skills. Then the Pax node that I was just mentioning is Master Exploder. So explosive skill damage increased by 100% of our resistance piercing. So it's just straight up. Resistance piercing is more damage for your explosive skills, and it's why we're able to do so much with our eruptions and overheats. Otherwise, this is normally the Pax setup that I run for this build. If you guys want to spam your abilities a little bit more, you can take out Backdraft and put it into Arsonist, but I do like the bonus to our anomaly power for each skill on cooldown, so I do that. Also, if you guys want to do some sort of like boss cheesing, killing them in like almost guaranteed 1 phases, you can take out Conduction and put it into Trigger Sequence. You guys can learn some different rotations with this, but most of the time, this is how I keep it for every single thing that I do in this game. But feel free to play around with different Pax tree setups to your liking. Now, to quickly go through our gear, we're going to start off with our weapons. Now, our main weapon that we're going to have out most of the time is not necessarily going to be Heir to the Desert. It just happens to work out. So what you're going to be looking for on your main weapon is going to be Armor Pierce. Obviously, Status Power and Skill Leech are going to be some other good ones to have, but the main one is the Armor Pierce. Like we said, that gets turned into Resistance Piercing, and that's straight damage. And then otherwise, the 2 main mods you're going to want on your gun is Mage's Rage and Fortress. Obviously, it's going to boost our anomaly power and just straight up damage. And on top of that, survivability. My ideal weapon as our main one would be the Mythos, because then this Sandstorm would end up being Omen, so we can actually debuff the target and deal a little bit of damage as well. Otherwise, I just have a swap weapon with Firestorm for my overheats. Now on my pistol, it doesn't have to be the pistol, it can be your other weapon. But basically what you're going to be looking for is a purple with armor pierce on here. And then it's going to roll with the mod First Things First, that tier 1 mod, because this is going to boost our armor piercing by 50%. So all you guys got to do is shoot with your gun to proc Fortress and then reload. And then just make sure you don't shoot. And that 50% will be added to your armor piercing stats, which is going to be turned into resistance piercing overall, just more damage again. And all you guys are going to be looking for on this is this would almost be perfect like you see right here, but Scrap Grenade would end up being Mage's Rage or Fortress, completely up to you. Those can be interchangeable. As long as you have First Things First, Fortress, and Mage's Rage on here, that is going to be your bossing weapon. And I know that can be incredibly hard to find. I haven't even found it yet. So the Arid of Desert or like Mythos with Mage's Rage and Fortress is going to be pretty much what you just run all of the time. Now let's take a look at our armor. Our set that we're going to be using is the Lava Lich set. So this is going to increase our eruption damage by 100% and decreases cooldown by 30%. So that's huge for just spamming the eruptions. Now we're going to end up having 6 eruption mods on here. One of them I would like to change at some point if I get the chance to. I'm just kind of waiting on the gear to drop. But starting off with our helmet, it's going to end up having Etna, Magma Coat, and Pompeii. So we get 3 charges of eruption, also increases the damage over time of eruption. That is just overall a base damage increase. And then on our chest piece, we're going to be running Arms and Anomaly. And then we're going to keep Giga Blast on. Eruption has a huge radius. It's crazy how many things Eruption can hit. And then this is a must. It doesn't have to be in the slot, but obviously just in the build. No resistance against the fortified. This is going to increase our resistance piercing by 100% of our armor piercing value. So that's why on the gun, you're going to want armor pierce. Also, we grab that node in the skill tree. So that is just one of the reasons we're running this mod. And then with that gear. And then otherwise on our pants, we're going to be running improved damage for our eruptions. And then we're going to be throwing on Unstoppable Force since we're getting so much resistance piercing. That's going to be a huge anomaly power bonus. As you guys can see, just idling right here, I'm at 2.5 million anomaly power, and that gets boosted up with Mage's Rage and the rest of my skills. So that's very nice. Otherwise, Debris is what I have on right now. It's okay for bossing. If it is possible, I would really like to change out Debris for the 50% increased duration on our eruptions. Like I said, the damage over time hits very hard. Also, it's going to help out your clear speeds as enemies are like piling into the map. So ideally, I would like to get rid of Debris for the duration. And then for our gloves and boots, they are going to be purple. So ideally, the passives would be like Anomaly, Cooldown, and Status as our perfect ones. And then on my gloves, I end up having Master Consumer. It's going to allow us to consume Ash for the big map clears, also increase damage. Also with my ideal setup, the Master Consumer is going to help us get more stacks with the mod Phoenix Force. That's going to be on our boots. But finishing up the gloves, we have Bullet Kindling that can roll on there. Otherwise, Ash Blast Range. This can be huge for clearing out more enemies per Ash Blast Overheat combo. And then finally on my boots, I like to roll Phoenix Force on there. It's going to be a huge base anomaly power bonus. Otherwise, I throw Death Sentence on there. And right now I have Empowerment. That is not what I want on here. What I ideally want is going to be Unstoppable Force there because I know it can roll on boots. And that would allow me to change Unstoppable Force up here to the having 2 charges of Overheat. So that way we can get essentially 3 stacks of Phoenix Force on just a single target. So like boss fights, it would help out a ton. Also, it would help out our single target damage as well, because when an enemy is burning, we're going to consume that, and that's going to turn them to ash with one of our skill tree nodes. And then we can do that again while an eruption's under them and consume both fire and ash for the increased damage. So overall, that's my ideal setup, but right now this has been working perfectly fine with empowerment. Like always, there's more to the build than just knowing what mods there are. It's also knowing how to play it. So here, just to show you guys, all I really try to do is try to get a central location in the middle of all the enemies to use my Ash Blast. Then I shoot the enemies in the head for my Arms and Anomaly, and all of those bonuses get Mage's Rage. And otherwise, you guys can see how much damage the Eruption and all of this is doing. And right here, we are done with the first part of Chem Plant in under 30 seconds. I was also being pretty slow on top of that, but you can just get a sense of the idea of how quick the clear speed and single target damage is out of this. So it's just always freeze enemies, proc up your Mage's Rage in Fortress, and then go to town. Everything will just end up dying, and you can just do whatever you want. And here, make sure you do use all of your skills so you can get the cooldowns out of your packs tree. It's going to help you out a ton with your clear speeds. And then obviously having the 3 eruptions is huge as well, because I can do 1, 2 right there. And then I can use the final one here on the elevator once it ends up opening. But we're going to see all of these enemies just get wiped here. I'm going to proc all my stuff, press a couple buttons, and everybody's gone. It's seriously that simple. It stays that simple no matter what you're doing. If you're doing expeditions, trials, it's seriously just that repeated over and over and over. You can be very tanky as well, because nothing can really shoot you, which is very helpful. On top of it all, right there you could see how big the eruption radius is. We ended up killing that other elite with the eruption, even though we didn't even target him. Over here, I'm going to try to get to the middle. Then we're going to proc up all of our different bonuses, kill everything. We should be able to kill most of these enemies in one blast right there. And we're done with the lab. It's, like I said, that easy over and over, time and time again. Pretty much the hardest thing with this build is just knowing when to use your Ash Blast, because sometimes you can mess yourself up and like freeze enemies who are outside the map, or, you know, forgetting to shoot crits and stuff like that to proc Mage's Rage, also RN Arms and Anomaly. But as long as you guys are doing that, you'll be perfectly fine. Play the maps a few times, you'll learn when you can use Ash Blast and when it like slows you down with enemies coming out. But if you do end up locking them out, just make sure you use your Overheat. It'll consume the Ash and the enemies can get back out and you can get back going into your expedition. Yeah, with all of that talking, explaining, not really even paying attention, we still ran a 406 chem plant. Also, here is the damage screen from that full chem plant that we just did. So Overheat and Eruption are always going to be your top 2. Depending on the expedition, they're going to swap around. If there's a little bit more elites, Eruption is going to be a little bit higher. If there's more ads, Overheat's going to be higher. But as you guys can see, Empowerment does do decent damage, but it's completely unnecessary because Overheat's going to one-tap him anyways. And also you guys can see why I want to get rid of Debris. If it's not one of the big bosses, it's really going to do essentially nothing. So that's why I want the 50% increased duration on my Eruption instead of that Debris. But essentially that's all you need for this build. Just look for the 3 Lava Lich pieces, try to get Eruption, Apocalypse mods on there, or like I have here on my chest, no resistance against the Fortified. Those are all huge options. Good luck replacing the Debris and the Empowerment with the skills that I was mentioning earlier, but it's probably gonna be pretty tough for a lot of us to get our hands on that. So even as a not completely perfect build, you guys can see how powerful it still is. Once again, thank you to Outriders for sponsoring this video. It's awesome to be working with a game that I love. But then otherwise, if you guys want to catch me over on Twitch, we stream almost every single day. So if you have any sort of questions about the build or anything at all, make sure you come on, let me know over there. But if you did enjoy this build video, make sure you leave a thumbs up on it to let me know. It really does help me out. Also consider subscribing for more Outriders Worldslayer content. But anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya.